Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a cozy, fireside journey into a universal and honestly pretty uncomfortable truth about learning. The big idea we're unpacking is this: you have to start weak to end strong. Now, that might just sound like some motivational cheerleading, right? But as we'll see from both ancient philosophies and cutting-edge learning science, this is a profound pattern that's been recognized for thousands of years.
Think about it for a second. Why do we spend so much energy avoiding the exact thing that creates mastery? We all fear looking like a fool. We spend a massive amount of energy trying to dodge the embarrassment of not knowing something. But here's the kicker. This emotional and physical awkwardness, it isn't a defect in your learning journey. It's actually the doorway that all real skill absolutely has to pass through. The very condition we run from is exactly what's required for growth.
Act 1. The context.
Let's lay the philosophical groundwork here with what we like to call Papa's take. Papa, the author of the newsletter we're exploring today, along with beloved family figures like his spouse Colonel Debs and his late father Papa Q Bear, deeply understood a fundamental truth. True growth absolutely demands the complete humility of looking clumsy. It's just a fact. No one ever learned to ride a bike without falling off a few times, right? Powering through that initial scraped knee embarrassment is the only real path to mastery. And this idea connects beautifully to the ancient Zen concept of shoshin, which translates to beginner's mind. Taught way back in the 13th century by Dogen Zenji, the founder of the Soto Zen school, shoshin acts as this incredibly powerful counterweight to the closed-minded hubris we see all too often in seasoned experts. It basically means approaching a subject with total openness and eagerness. You strip away all your preconceptions, even if you're already operating at a highly advanced level.
There's a brilliant quote popularized by Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki in 1970 that perfectly exposes the hidden trap of expertise. He said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's, there are few." You see, expertise can quietly harden into rigid assumptions. The expert stops looking, simply because they think they already know the answer. But the beginner, well, they haven't decided what's impossible yet. They remain completely open, hungry, and keenly observant of what is actually happening right in front of them.
Act 2. The tension. So why does learning actually feel so terrible in the moment? Well, modern science has spent decades measuring this exact struggle. Enter the Dreyfus model of skill acquisition. It outlines our climb from being a totally helpless, rule-bound novice with absolutely zero feel for context, all the way up to becoming an intuitive expert. And what it proves is that this clumsy, rigid first stage, where you feel completely dependent on an instruction manual, is an entirely normal and temporary stage of human development. Now, the crucial part is how we actually navigate that climb. The renowned researcher Anders Ericsson showed that ascending this ladder requires what he called deliberate practice. This means actively targeting your absolute weakest points, seeking out expert feedback, and constantly pushing just past your current ability. Interestingly, Ericsson pointed out that his work was actually misinterpreted by Malcolm Gladwell into the famous 10,000-hour rule. Because just mindlessly logging 10,000 hours doing the exact same thing, that doesn't make you an expert. True improvement requires you to struggle right at the bleeding edge of your capability.
And this brilliantly illustrates psychologist Robert Bjork's concept of desirable difficulties. Science shows us that conditions that actually slow down your learning and increase your errors, like spacing out your study sessions or mixing up topics, well, they produce much stronger, durable memories. Smooth, easy practice, that's often just a dangerous illusion of mastery. When you're struggling to retrieve information, you're actually building real skill. Basically, the beginner's embarrassment is just desirable difficulty manifesting as an emotion.
But wait, what happens when a novice feels absolutely no struggle or embarrassment at all? Back in 1999, Dunning-Kruger and David Dunning published a wildly famous paper warning us about the falsely confident individual. They observed that folks who score in the bottom quartile on tests often grossly overestimate their own performance. They simply lack the metacognitive skills to even realize their own incompetence, which leaves them trapped in this illusion that they're doing just fine. Now, to be completely fair, it's worth noting that the Dunning-Kruger effect is actually hotly debated right now. Recent academic critiques, like some fascinating work out of McGill University, suggest the effect might just be a statistical measurement error, driven by how unreliable self-assessment is, rather than a genuine flaw in human psychology. But honestly, even if the extreme version of this bias is just a statistical artifact, the core lesson absolutely stands. A total lack of embarrassment or self-correction means there's an absence of real learning.
Act 3. The connection. Let's connect all this back to your daily life.
Think about those moments when you feel completely engulfed by a rising tide of complexity. Maybe you're taking on a new role, starting a business, or trying to learn a new language. Adopting a novice stance means voluntarily shedding your protective armor of experience. And let's be real, it's a profound physical vulnerability. When you stand completely exposed to someone who cannot yet do the thing, you might literally experience shaking hands, a pounding heart, and genuine anxiety. That is the heavy, emotional toll of the beginner's paradox.
But here's the secret. The people who truly thrive on being beginners, they aren't immune to this discomfort at all. They've just learned to reinterpret it. They read the embarrassment as a vital, honest signal that they are standing exactly where growth happens. Now, of course, the difficulty has to be kept within reach, ideally paired with clear feedback so it doesn't just spiral into paralyzing shame. But that acute discomfort, that's proof, absolute proof, that you are stretching your capabilities.
The synthesis. Let's synthesize this whole journey across philosophy and psychology into a few key takeaways you can actually use. First, remember that weakness at the start is the absolute, non-negotiable cost of entry for a competent life. Second, actively maintain shoshin so your hard-earned expertise doesn't calcify into arrogance. Third, deliberately seek out those desirable difficulties. And finally, embrace the honest signal of embarrassment. Literally, the best in the world must humble themselves to keep learning.
I want to leave you with this final, Papa-inspired thought. The absolute best people in the world are constantly working to improve, and they are completely unafraid to look awkward while doing it. The willingness to embrace your inner, clumsy beginner today is the only true pathway to lifelong mastery tomorrow. So the real question is, will you risk looking foolish for a season to look capable for a lifetime? Thank you for exploring this fascinating paradox with us in today's Explainer, and hey, I challenge you to go out and be a beginner at something today.